The MGA was so different from anything that MG had produced before. Going back in history, the T-Type and all its predecessors were all nice little 2- or 4-seater little square cars. They were all very similar in shape in a way. They were high front cowled with the straight backs to them. And this, with its sweeping curves, is totally different.
A race-bred car which gives both the competition driver and the normal intelligent motorist the finest value for money they have ever dreamed of. It's showing its paces on the Myra track, the Motor Industry Research Association in Leicestershire. Like its standard MGA brother, the twin cam combines speed with comfort.
It really stopped the old-fashioned look of the MG, if you like, and brought out a certainly more sophisticated MG in terms of streamlining. Part of the pedigree of this car obviously stems from the research that went into EX181, the Utah salt flat record breaker, as was driven by Sterling Moss.
And from the moment the MG Special crosses the start line, it's obvious the old records are going to be smashed by a handsome margin. The only question is, by how big a margin? One by one, the records pile up. 1 kilometre, 245.64 miles an hour. 1 mile, 245.11 miles an hour.
Considering the car was so revolutionary in its time, it was quite amazing that something so new could be such a success. There was a storm of protest when it first came out because it wasn't what people were used to. I think that's probably true of anything that comes out. It's not what is considered true MG form, true MG shape. So the purists were up in arms. They didn't like it. They didn't want to buy it. The only measure of success really is in sales figures. 13,000 in the first full year of production. They then went on to build 58,000 1500s and 31,000 MGA 1600s. And in total, with a smattering of twin cams, deluxes, and all the MGAs put together, they built this staggering total of 101,081. And of course, a lot of them went overseas. The States were mad keen on them. A lot went straight away. They went from the factory straight to California. And of course, a lot have come back from California since, including my car, which sits behind me now. This is a California re-import. The MGA is a delight to drive. It's not quick. It doesn't have 0 to 60 in 0.x seconds, but it's pure pleasure. I tend to crunch it, the gears happily between first and second, but it's a very nice car to drive, and it's like having a modern car in a classic body. The MG came from a time when Britain was great, and still is, of course, but it represents everything that's nice about Britain. You stop at traffic lights and the lorry driver leans out of his cab and you're expecting the bit of smart and the chat up line, and all you get is what year is the car and has it got disc or drum brakes, and always Dad had one. It's definitely a friendly, happy car. There's something about a girl in a sports car, but it's for my pleasure. Actually, it does me good. It's my ego trip, if you like. It doesn't really matter what anybody else thinks, but you do get admiring glances. I think it's probably for the car, certainly not for me, perhaps for the dog, but people do wave, and it's a happier day when you take the MG out.
Often this is how the octagon spirit makes itself felt on this otherwise humdrum planet. MGB, latest of the breed, latest example of the octagon spirit. MGB, a high-performance vehicle.
The MGB was launched in 1962, and it was very well received by the motoring press and the public alike. It followed on from the MGA. The MGB differed from the A in as much as it was a monocoque construction. That means the strength was actually in the complete body pressing, whereas the MGA was built on a solid chassis. The whole idea behind the car was to make it affordable. MGs always had been affordable right from the word go, and for the first time they were going to go into high volume, low cost production. Well, the GT followed on in 1965, and that was really just giving another dimension to the MGB with the solid roof, more security. You could carry more things inside the car because you had the opening tailgate. Ideal shopping car for the ladies.
Today's MGB has rack and pinion steering, race season suspension, 4-speed gearbox and hefty 1798cc engine. A few reasons why the MGB is the most popular MG ever built. MG, the sports car America loved first.
The MGB GT V8 was introduced in '73 by British Leyland. The wrong time really. It was right in the middle of the fuel crisis in the Middle East, and petrol was astronomical. People thought that the big 3.5 litre engine was going to guzzle the fuel, which was a bit of a myth really. Driven sedately, you could get 28 to the gallon. Drive it hard and it would drop down to lower 20s. But it was a really stunning performer. 0 to 60 in 7.2 seconds was really quick for early 70s cars. Well, I have to enthuse about it. I've owned it virtually from new. I've done about 200,000 miles odd in it, used every day. I think it's a great car, very underrated. People say, does it handle? Yes, it's fine. It's down to the driver.
In the 70s, under British Leyland, MG began to lose their way. Their brochures and their advertising has no logo and no reference to the past. It tries to be aggressively modern. It takes up the theme of you can do it in an MGB with all the sexual overtones of that, and their brochures and their presentations showed nothing of the pedigree and everything of the girl in the car. All this was really the end of MG, certainly in that phase. And once they'd lost sight of their history, of their logo, of their traditions, they were in fact doomed to failure because nobody was actually buying the new image they presented. And in fact, I think MG in that period, both their advertising and perhaps their cars became a bit of a laughingstock.
Hands are marvelous things. They can put together something as rugged and reliable as a front disc brake, or as precise as a carburetor. They can assemble a 4-speed all-synchromesh gearbox, or guide a race-proven engine into an all-steel monocoque body. There are over 1,000 pairs of hands at Abingdon, England. Together, they build the MGB.
The rubber-bumpered MGB was introduced in '75, and that was to comply with the American regulations, safety regulations. It was very important for the MG, or British Leyland as it was then, to export these cars, bring dollars into the UK. The bumpers were set at a very high ride height to comply with ramming up the rear of American cars. There was a whole host of things that affected the performance because they had to have emission control systems. Now, this is the MG V8, which was introduced in 1992. This car is the last of the MGB line, a limited run car of 2,000 vehicles. It was introduced to celebrate 30 years of the MGB. Very expensive car. The affordable MG went out the window with this one. It's £26,000, but very luxuriously appointed, very good performer. 3.9 litre fuel-injected V8 engine, giving stunning performance, 0 to 60 in about 5.5 seconds, something of that order. A very quick car. Well, I think the MGB is the epitome of the British sports car. It was exported worldwide, and anybody you talk to, they recognise an MGB. It's just got that attraction about it. It's one of the few cars that was in continuous production for 18 years, which is unheard of really in motor industry terms. And 30 years on, it's a timeless design. Timeless design. It hasn't aged at all. For me personally, the car is just bags of character. The MGB, originally it didn't set the world alight with performance, but people still drive them today. It'll keep up with most of the modern traffic on the road. It's a great motorway performer. You can cruise along at 75 quite happily, and it doesn't cost an arm and a leg to run.
Before the company was known as British Leyland, the company was BMC, British Motor Corporation, and it didn't just involve MG, it involved other marques, and in particular Triumph. And there was quite a lot of bitterness and rivalry between the Triumph and the MG camps. And unfortunately, the Triumph people got the money, the Triumph people got the investment, and the Triumph people got the designs of the new cars. But in 1979, a tragedy befell MG. MG Abingdon factory employees learnt that Sir Michael Edwards had announced that the MG factory was due to close, and that was known as Black Monday. So they closed the factory. But British Leyland got a shock. they didn't realise just how much love there was and affection, not just in Britain, not just with enthusiasts, but with everybody all over the world. And they realised with all this furor that they had a tremendous asset in the Marque MG. Now, they didn't have the money then to develop a new sports car. So what they did was they brought out an MG badged version of the Metro, the Maestro and the Montego. Now, some of the purists went absolutely berserk. You can't put an MG badge on this. This is just a bog standard family car. But they said, no, wait and see, because this car is a very fast, very good performance car, and it's worthy of the MG badge. And enthusiasts liked the car, and they said, yes, we can understand what you're doing, but what we really want is the introduction of an MG high-volume, low-cost sports car. And we badgered British Leyland to do this, and behind the scenes, they worked on the car, they worked on the MGF, and in March 1995, the MGF was launched at Geneva, and it stole the show. Other cars were launched, even the Bentley Azure was there, but the MGF stole the show. Unlike robot-built cars, which are stamped out in their thousands and just sold, they have no character, no personality. The MGs, for many, many years, were hand-built, and what people are doing is they're rejecting the modern press stampings, and they're going for cars with character. And the first year's production has already been sold. The Japanese, who are potty about MG and British sports cars, have ordered a whole year's production, which they'll have to wait for. Rover Group know the strength of the MG mark, and we're really looking forward to the next generation, a new generation of MGs.
In my opinion, the MGF is an excellent two-seater sports car. It fits into the mould of the previous models, such as the MGB and earlier cars, and it's the sort of car which Cecil Kimball would have been proud to produce himself.
MGs are just pure fun. They can appeal to every walk of life. You can buy an MG for a few £100s, or you can spend thousands of pounds on it. They don't have this snobbish elitism attached to them like perhaps some of the bigger cars do, the Jaguars, the Alphas, the Austin Healey's, the Aston Martins. You drive along in this car and suddenly the world seems a brighter place. People smile at you and you smile at them, they wave to you. There's no jealousy attached to them. It's definitely a British car and people love it. Literally, they just love MGs.